I've been walking down this dirt road. I got rocks in both my shoes. Welcome to That Dirt Road Radio Show, where we honor music's past and discover music's present. I'm Howard Curry, and I'll be your host. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. For today's show, we caught up with Carolanne Wolfe, songwriter, musician, and producer. Now let's go to the show.
I see music as a form of self-expression. It's my creative outlet. So I feel like it's just a part of who I am, and it just feels good. It feels good to say, hey, I made that. Something that was in my head, came out into the external world, and it's a cool feeling.
Was there something or a point in time where you were inspired to do that?
Yeah, there was a couple distinct moments in my life where I was really interested in writing my own songs. I remember I was about maybe 8-9 years old. I started to write poetry. I considered it song lyrics. And so I'd come up with different songs, but there's no music attached to it. I didn't have the musical part or the component at that time. It wasn't until I was about 15 or 16 I took an interest in playing guitar and piano, and I took lessons for a couple years and kind of got the gist of doing basic chord stuff. I got inspired to combine the lyrics and the music and figure out how to put it all together. Gosh, singing how long ago that was. It's been a while. I've been interested in this for a very long time. I like to write a song in the most basic form, playing on the piano, coming up with a melody line or a chord progression that way, or on my guitar. I just feel like the song's a lot easier to write when you start organically versus with the advent of the computer and creating music on the computer, you can kind of get stuck in this box and just kind of make inside the box. And I feel like it kind of loses something when you do that. So I prefer to start with the guitar or piano and then put it into my music program and kind of add to it from there. Because the sonic landscape is just massive with computer technology. Like all the synths that you can use and virtual instruments. I can make a whole orchestral score just on my computer.
Okay. Have you collaborated with other folks?
Yeah, I have quite a bit, actually. Just from the very beginning, when I started writing songs, I've worked with other people. But I have done quite a bit of solo work. I feel like sometimes it's good for me to just see what I can do on my own. Like I have a very specific vision for something. What I enjoy working with others is their insight and what they bring to the table and things I didn't even think of. And it's a cool feeling. It's a very special shared experience with somebody. And I've created deep bonds with people writing music together. There was a friend of mine that was going through a breakup, and we wrote a whole album about it. And she's expressed to me it's been one of the most healing things she's ever done with somebody. Her name is Jenny Reed, and the album is called Radio Silence.
So what about your recording of your music? Is there something that you're working on now that's coming out, or?
Well, I like to release stuff with a pseudonym, so I kind of let the music and whatever name kind of take its own personality that's away from, that's kind of detached from me. So I have a name for some of my earlier music that was more electronic, and you can find that stuff. It's under Freya Wolfe. When I wanted to make the music I really wanted to make, which is like a modern 80s synth style, like synthwave, I came up with the name Taylor Voss, and I've released quite a bit under that name. I had another project I did under, I called it Byrdy Wolfe, B-Y-R-D-Y, Wolfe, my last name. And that was experimental for me. It was completely outside of my wheelhouse. It was this lo-fi, hip-hop, kind of down-tempo music, and it was kind of more macabre themed, a little darker stuff for me, and it was a completely separate identity from the other music I was doing. I could not release it under the same name, so I had to come up with a whole new identity for that, and it allowed me the freedom to express myself in that way. And the last project I released was called Lullabies for Serial Killers, and I've been fascinated with that topic for a long time, since I was a kid. And I listened to hours and hours and hours of interviews, and I carefully sampled interviews and combined it with very subdued, melodic, and I call them lullabies because it's very soft music underneath, and I thought it was an unusual pairing. And it's nothing graphic. I listed out the transcripts of the interview so people kind of had a heads up of what was going to be said. And then I had the instrumental versions if they didn't want to hear it. I never realized how thoughtful I was when it comes to my process. You know, it was just kind of like a painter. You want to try different mediums and, you know, different forms of expression. So I kind of see myself that way. So it's like I have an idea for something, and if it doesn't align with something else I've done, then I just create a new identity for it.
You go where it takes you.
Yeah, you could say that. I mean, there's some things I probably won't try my hand at, like jazz. Just doesn't. It seems a little too over my head. I enjoy listening to it, but creating it probably is not something I would explore. I do have a certain aesthetic. Over time, I've kind of seen that I have a certain style. It's just expressed differently with different elements. I don't really write harsh music very often. It's not very grating on the ears. There's always some kind of softness to it.
What's a good song?
A good song is something that just you can sit with it, and it's almost like meditation. You really can't think about anything else. It takes you. It transports you to another world. It's like you're experiencing life for the first time.
Are there other musicians who inspire you?
I mean, there's a lot of artists that I like. I was raised by my grandparents, so I grew up listening to older styles of music, and I really have an affinity for that. I like older music, but as far as like the electronic stuff, what really got me into that was an artist named BT, and what I liked about him is he broke the mold on everything. All of his music, minimum like 5-6 minutes every song, and it's just this. It's mind blowing how he takes a theme and he builds upon it, and it feels like it's genreless, but it's not, and he'll just keep morphing it as the song progresses, and the whole time you're fascinated with every second of it. There's just so much texture and detail to it, and just things that just I never thought to do. And he pushes a lot of boundaries, and just kind of how his mindset is. I've read interviews about him. I've met him before a couple times. He doesn't even call himself a composer or a producer or any of that. He calls himself a sonic architect, and I've clung to that over the years.
Are there others who influence you lyrically?
I cannot think of his name. It's the guy who worked with Elton John.
Bernie Taupin.
Yes, I love the story of him and Elton John working together and how they collaborated. They were just so in sync. I love his lyrics. I mean, my gosh, the stuff Elton did with them. Like, I love that music so much. The lyrical style. I mean, they're just iconic songs. I mean, the other band I was thinking of was Fleetwood Mac. I grew up with them, and I loved them to death.
But I just didn't know if in all of your years of dealing with folks, if there was someone who had something of real value that stuck with you about creating your own music.
You know, now that I think about it, I did find some quotes early on when I started to really take it seriously, making my own songs. And I had a vision board, and I'd print out a lot of these quotes of other artists and kind of how they thought about things. So I'm looking at my vision board. I have a few that I'd like to share. I think the best one, it's a little long, but one of the best ones I read was by this guy named Headhunters, and it was a Facebook post, and I followed him, and he shared, somebody had reached out to him and said, how does it make you feel to see that the fans that once adored you now all hate you and think you suck? All for money. Don't you have trouble sleeping at night? And he said, my musical path was never about pleasing you. Think again of what bringing you the music that comes from within means. From within means that it's mine. It's what I love to do. It does not mean what anybody else loves me to do. It also does not say bringing you the hard style that comes from within. What goes on inside you does not remain forever the same. It does not. It's always subject to change, as is your musical taste. So what the music from within means to me can also change over the years. And luckily, after 8 years of doing the same thing, I found the right amount of courage to listen to that inner need for a fresh breath of air. Of course, knowing that people like you would be coming along feeling hurt and blaming me for that. Live your deepest truth, even if that means losing everything. And that really resonated with me.
Yes.
I wrote it for me first. You don't think what's going to make my fans happy, or what's going to make so-and-so happy, or, who's going to like this. And, that's your analytical mind taking over. And you don't make music from an analytical state of mind. You make it from within your heart, really. But I quit getting hung up on overthinking things and worrying what other people thought. There was another guy I was really into. His name was Porter Robinson, and he had worked with BT at some point, and that's how I heard about him. But his quote that I liked was, He said, my studio was lo-fi by necessity. I was 14 with no reliable income. I was monitoring my music using $100 Logitech speakers, and I only used software. And what I took from that was, it's not the gear. It's not, having all of the top of the line software and equipment. You could make an amazing song just on a piano, on a guitar. Like, we've all heard those. I know there's Candle in the Wind. Like, I just think of that as mainly a piano song, and Elton John and Bernie's lyrics. He didn't need the whole setup. He didn't need hundreds of dollars worth of equipment, all the software overproduction. Like, a good song can just be very simple and start with just the most basic setup.
You try to pull me in. I fight a war I can win. But here we are, alone in the dark, face to face. Can you feel my heartbeat? 'Cause I didn't know, yeah, never realized how much I needed your familiar eyes. I try to comprehend if I should run or give in. But here we are, alone in the dark, face to face. Can you feel my heartbeat? 'Cause I didn't know, yeah, never realized how much I needed your familiar eyes.
What led you to produce music for other people?
Oh, for other people?
Yeah.
I think what started me producing with other people was a couple friends that wanted to write songs with me. They wanted to work with me. They heard some of the stuff I was trying to do on my own, and they said, "Oh, that sounds really neat. Can we work on something together?" I've always wanted to write songs with other people, and like, I had a friend that was into kind of like alternative rock kind of stuff that was outside my wheelhouse, and I would always try to work with people that are different than me, because it pushed me in a different way. Like, I've tried a lot of different genres, and then that's kind of how I figured out what I really liked. Just tried everything. And so this friend was wanting to do like rock style music and combine it with electronic music. So combine the two things that we liked. And so I started working with her, and it kind of felt safe because it was a friend. It wasn't like a client. It wasn't somebody paying me. And I could just have fun with it. There was no expectation with it. I was just like, hey, let's see what happens. Just kind of have that creative, childlike sense of play in a way. And we kind of lose that when we start taking it too seriously. We try to make a career out of it. We stop having fun sometimes. And so that was important for me to experience that early on, is that sense of fun and enjoyment. Because working with other people, it helps you see things that maybe you're blind to because you just stared at something for so long. And that's another reason why I got into producing with other people. Sometimes it's good to have somebody to bounce ideas off of, to get stuck and have that outside opinion. And that's been the key element to moving forward and progressing and getting better. Because it's not a solo journey all the time. And I don't feel like it should be.
What is your preferred, person A comes into your studio, and what is your process when you're dealing with producing someone else?
My process when I work with a brand new person is to understand them and their goals and kind of their vision, what they have for their music, what brought them in here to me, what made them take that step. Because for some people, it's the first time stepping into a studio. And, just kind of letting them speak to that motivation. What brought them there? Standing in front of me and wanting to do this thing. And once I start peeling back the layers and start understanding them, then I'm better able to envision how I can support them and help them with my knowledge, my tools, my skill set, how I can help them bring that vision to life. I almost see it as a form of therapy. And I feel like it's, for some people, very cathartic to write music. And it's worked for me that way, too, in the past. And like I mentioned, my friend Jenny earlier, that was a very cathartic experience for her and myself. I felt it vicariously. I'm an empathic person, so I couldn't help but, feel for her on that level. And so what I would do is kind of just get to the core of who they are and their purpose for this. And then I'd find my way to kind of coax it out of them and kind of guide them in a very gentle, non-stressful way. I feel like when people are stressed out, they're kind of in that survival state of mind. And it's really hard to relax and be creative in a time where your body's like, hey, this is panic time. Like, we don't have time to rest and relax and, create and all of that stuff. And so they are very incongruent things. So I have to find a way to bring them kind of to a calmer state. And then I feel like creativity can blossom that way.
I can see how you would be, you almost have to become selective in what you take on, because you have a deeper, these are my words, not yours, but it seems to me you have a deeper commitment to your art. It's not just something you're doing. I mean, you literally have a passion for what you do. And you that takes time.
It does. And, time is a precious resource. And, when you're younger, you think you have endless amounts of it. So you're not as selective. And it wasn't until I got to a certain age, probably around 30, where I'm like, okay, I need to really think about how I'm spending my time, because, there's only so much time you're going to be given to do certain things. I don't imagine working on music when I'm like 70, 80 years old. Like, I'm going to enter a different phase of my life. So, whenever that time is, like, I feel like quantity creates quality. So the more I do, the better it gets. And the more I have to show for it. And some people get stuck on the same song, for years, and they keep redoing it. And I'm like, well, all this time you could have had, a gazillion songs, but, that perfection, you got to kind of let that go too. Because it's how your heart felt it. It's how your creative mind saw it, and it saw it and felt it perfectly. And that's how it's presented to the world. That's how it came out. Like, you don't get to decide if it's an ugly baby or not. Like, I have to take my opinion out of it. Just say, well, this is what came out of me today. This is what I was gifted with. And when I'm able to let that go, then I can just move on to the next one. And it's kind of like you experience this feeling of joy. Like you just, I don't know any other way to say it, but like you're just blessed with this gift, and it's like you just feel this happiness, like, oh, this came out, and then this came out, and I just have all this stuff inside me. Because creativity is endless. Your time is not. And I had to remind myself, I have more I can create. I can just do this all the time. There's just so much inside me. And instead of getting stuck on that one thing, it's like, I'll just move on to another one. And that could be even better. And I just won't know until I let go and just go with the flow and let it happen.
So I'd like to go back to your music for just a minute.
Sure.
And you talked about that you have some songs that are completed, some songs you're working on. Do you have plans to put that down on a record, and if so, is there a timeline for that?
Yeah, I have about, so I had to guess, probably at least 6 to 8 songs for my solo stuff that are in the varying stages. Some are almost done. I just need to, mix them and master them. Some need a little bit more refining. But I'm hoping within the next few months I can start releasing again. It's been a good bit since I released a song under that project name. I've been busy working on other projects. I have another project I didn't mention yet. But I met a writer friend who is incredibly talented, and he has all these stories, and he has ideas for the music, and he wants to combine kind of like for lack of a better description, like an audio drama in a way. And he wants to combine the story elements, the sound effects, and then the music with it. Just no film. It's just kind of like if you just stripped the film of its, audio elements, and that's all you had. And just kind of recreate that. And him and I bonded over our love for John Carpenter and his works. And because he does the music as well, in conjunction with his films. And so we've, taken elements of the horror genres, especially like from the 80s. We both appreciate 80s slasher films. And so we're writing a Halloween themed, like we've been working up to that. I've worked with him probably, almost 2 years now. And we've released a few records. They're in like the 80s synth genre, and then we kind of experimented with stuff like Joy Division, like Dark Wave stuff. We made an album with that, and they're all slowly working towards what we originally wanted to do, which is he has a whole synthwave style story, like kind of like a cyberpunk setting, and he has all these characters and these scripts that he's written out, and then he'll write out like, the kind of music he envisions, brooding melodic synth music starts playing here, and then like different sound effects that he envisioned. And so we've collaborated in a new way, and I'm trying to bring that vision to life. It's not like he's writing, song lyrics and we're writing a song. We're creating a story, coupled with the music. And so it's called Children of the Retrowave, and shorthand COTR. It was a mouthful. And I've released an ambient synthwave album with him, and it's gapless. And I've experimented with gapless albums where they just flow together seamlessly. And I did learn that from BT, because his whole album it's like an hour and a half, 2-hour album. It just plays together beautifully in one solid track, but then you can play individually the tracks. So I learned how to do that, and I was able to finesse that technique in that album, and then I did it with the next one. And then we've released some individual singles that are supplemental to the main story where he's writing and working on. But we're kind of building up to that and kind of honing our style and how we really want to present it. So it's been a huge learning experience for me. I've learned so many different techniques and really had a chance to dig deep into the creative part of myself that I've always wanted to do, which is like incorporating sound effects and building an audio story that way, and kind of just the old style where people would, listen to the radio and have a whole story play for them. And, people don't do that anymore, really. Because you have, TV, you have films now. You don't just listen to a story that way anymore. And so we were just kind of trying to tap back into that. And so we've been working on this horror one that we're trying to release by Halloween, crossing our fingers. We've been kind of working on that one. And I love Tales from the Crypt as a kid. And so we've come up with an idea of like a host, and there's all these spooky stories, and they're all tied together. And so I've been working on the songs with that and kind of making that gapless thing again with sound effects. And, we got actors that he's working with. So it's enabled me to collaborate with several people, probably the biggest projects I've ever worked on. And he'll find these actors and get them involved, and they'll have character lines. And so kind of crafting it in a different way. It's something completely outside my wheelhouse that I've never really done before, but I've always wanted to do. So just kind of pushing my boundaries and always growing and evolving. I think that's important for an artist, to kind of step outside your comfort zone. So that's something that I'm working on as well, in addition to my solo stuff.
You've been very busy.
I've been very busy.
So you've spent a lot of time talking about your music and producing. Is there something you'd like to add, or you have any final words for the show?
Yes. While thinking about everything that we've discussed and all the things that you've asked me, I've thought about things that I haven't thought about in a really long time. And, speaking of influences, somebody who became one of my closest friends, she goes by the name Autumn Kalquist, and she's an artist, musician herself. She's also a novelist. She's a very creative person. I met her back in 2013 through a Craigslist ad, and I was looking to collaborate with other people. And I remember, I was thinking about all the people I've met and worked with, and I remember when I met her that we just clicked, and she kind of helped propel me into. She helped me upgrade myself just as a person and where I was musically. She really challenged me and pushed me, and that's where I really felt like I could do this. I could take it to the next level. I was kind of still trying to find my identity and, still trying to hone my craft, and I didn't feel like I was there yet. I kind of would start and stop and start and stop. And without having like any kind of true guidance from like a mentor, and in particular, like somebody who, talked to me specifically, just kind of getting pieces here and there of people I looked up to, having that personal one-on-one, like I just thinking about it, I remembered that she was a very significant person in my musical journey. And, I can't believe I've known her almost 10 years, but, that's the thing. Like I thought this was a solo journey for a long time, but, when I met her and then subsequently I met other people like Bobby and Jenny, I realized it's not. If you want to really grow, like working with other people is definitely key. And I forgot I'm just going down memory lane with you.
Oh, it sounds like she was certainly an influence and a positive influence on you. And it's not easy when you're on a call or when you're in an interview to remember. That's a tough question. Like when someone asks you to talk about your influences, it's very difficult to in one pass get all those folks, especially when you've been at it for a while. But it sounds like she was really a major influence in your art. Speaking,
she was, she still is.
Yeah, and speaking on that, what would you say to a young person who's decided that they want to get involved in art or music or producing or songwriting? What would be your advice to them as someone who wanted to just provide some guidance to someone?
That's a good question. I've encountered young people throughout my career, if you want to call it that, my journey. And I continue to encounter younger people who are starting to get into production and writing their own songs. Aside from like technical advice, I encourage them to not judge themselves, not listen to the judgment of others, and kind of listen to their own voice and what speaks to them, and just kind of experiment with things. It's kind of like when somebody's diving into any kind of art form, just kind of try a little bit of everything. Just do it without really thinking about it, and just see how it feels and see what resonates with you. And you're not always going to know right away what that thing is, but you'll eventually discover it. It's kind of like embracing the art of discovery, really. And that's kind of what I would encourage right off the bat with somebody. Like, just try to enjoy that process. Just try everything. It's kind of, I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and there's a lot of parallels with that in music, believe it or not. And there are so many different things you can learn in Jiu-Jitsu, and what's left over, what you retain, is what resonated with you. And I've tried just about every move in that martial art. But there's certain things that really click for me, and then I just continue to pursue them and refine them. And so I kind of applied that mentality and mindset to music. And so it's kind of what I tell people from the get-go if they're first like getting into it. It's like, okay, cool. You like, pop music or rock music. Well, maybe try to blend those two together, or if they're, far apart, like more niche stuff, try to find ways to combine them or try different things. Just enjoy that process of discovery, because it's a long journey. If you really love music, it's a long journey.
That's a good thing.
So you might as well enjoy it.
We'd like to thank Carolanne Wolfe and all of you for tuning in, as well as our sponsor, Town Farm Music. You'll find more about Carolanne and her music by searching on Spotify and Bandcamp. Check the show notes for the songs that were played from today's show. So until next time, see you down that dirt road.
It's a long and twisted dirt road.